Hi marketers, welcome back. Today we're looking at native advertising, or more precisely, influencer marketing. I hope you've had a chance for background to take a look at that Last Week Tonight episode that talks about native advertising. It's a great in-depth look at where native advertising's come from and why publishers are so desperate to make use of it. There's tons of money in that area, and as we as consumers spend less and less time looking at ads online, we're going to see more and more of this type of advertising. The video is also really fun for two other reasons. One is that I actually ran into Meredith, who's now the CEO of the New York Times, and Sebastian, who's also the global head of advertising for the New York Times, at a New York Ad Week event a couple years ago. Yes, it is kind of a funny photo because it seems that they don't hire people all that tall at the New York Times, despite them being very good at what they do. The second thing that's really fun about that video is that the Last Week Tonight team actually reached out. I've been doing research on native advertising for quite some time, and they were apparently looking at doing a follow-up episode of the one that you just saw. It hasn't come out yet, but it's cool always to be contacted. As John Oliver talked about in his episode, there has been a ton of concern around the potential for deception with native advertising and also influencers. This basically all started back when mommy bloggers began posting stuff in exchange for money and didn't always tell people about it. Not a great strategy. More recently, the FTC's gone through and they've had a series of different workshops and investigations basically trying to get facts and more information about how this affects consumers. They've asked people from both academia and also industry to come and testify and share their information about what the policy should be going forward on this new ad form. I was lucky enough to actually participate in their most recent workshop back in 2016, where I was able to share some of the work I was doing looking at the effectiveness of disclosures. Influencers are a subset of native advertising. They're basically people who go on social media and promote products in exchange for free stuff or money. Influencers are actually one of the more challenging types of native advertising to go through and actually take enforcement action against. This is because they take advantage of a whole bunch of different types of ambiguities around the current laws related to deceptive advertising. Back in 2018, a colleague and I actually looked into this issue in much more detail. We went through and carefully studied all of the different laws concerning deceptive advertising to take a look and see why influencers presented such a big challenge. We worked with people at the FTC, and we talked to people in industry as well too, and we wrote this paper that goes through and describes what exactly are the problems that they introduce. I won't go into extreme detail in the article here, although it's linked below if you want to go down and take a look at it in more detail, but I will talk briefly about some of these different dimensions that make influencers more challenging from an enforcement perspective. This table goes through and it outlines the different dimensions on which influencers and native advertising differ from traditionally covert types of ads. These are things like advertorials. Those are going to be news articles or magazine articles that look like a regular article, but in reality you're actually paid for by somebody. Or things like infomercials, which is a TV show that's actually been paid for. It's one big ad. These things, though, are relatively small in number, right? You kind of know what they are after you've kind of learned them. Whereas when you go on social media, there's tons of different types of forms that an influencer's post can take. It could be a blog. It could be a YouTube video. It could be a story. It could be a post, right? It could be something you see on LinkedIn. It becomes really difficult to constantly know all the different types of content that an influencer could be posting and which ones are exactly ads. Another concern with influencers is what the posts actually look like. When it comes to things like advertorials or infomercials, they look like news articles or magazine articles or TV shows, both things that are not content coming from friends or family. When we look at social media posts, though, they do look like stuff our friends could post, or they look like things our family members could be posting as well, right? We tend to trust other consumers, other people like us, much more than we trust another company or another organization. So the fact that we're potentially confusing social media influencers with people that we know and trust is really concerning. Influencers also tend to use more implicit claims. These are things that are not as clear and not as overt. And this becomes really apparent when you look at what kinds of posts influencers put up. Typically, or in many cases, they're very visual. They may not say exactly in text, go and buy this right now. They'll just showcase something and show it looking cool or trendy, or maybe make you aware something exists. The FTC is full of lawyers, and lawyers like text. Having explicit claims, things that are actually written down that tell you something is true or a certain way, those are easy to disprove in court. When it comes to things that are more implicit, like something looking cool or smiling at a bottle of Coke you're holding or things like that, those are harder claims to try and pin down. Was it actually an ad, or did it just happen to be in the post at the same time? Right? This makes it more challenging to go through and enforce these types of posts. Another challenge with influencers' posts is what lawyers call the material effect of it. This basically refers to what a post actually causes you to do as a consumer. If you look at stuff like advertorials or infomercials, they're trying usually to get you to go through and buy something now. And it's really easy to go through and see that we ran this particular infomercial or ran this advertorial and we got so many sales resulting in people calling in and buying stuff. When you're looking at influencers, they might just be trying to make you aware of something or causing you to like something more or change your attitude around something, right? The other thing as well too is that often it's the case that there's a ton of different influencers all posting about a similar product. So it becomes really challenging to tie the sale back that you might make to one particular influencer. If you can't pin one particular post back to an actual harm, it becomes really challenging to go through and prosecute that particular influencer for not disclosing properly.